getting it, fella. Look here.
Stand by.
One for C-Lab, two for Troy Eagle, three for Wolverine to round out the trio. In this episode, everybody dies.
Broadcasting live from inside the Power Band, this is The Blah. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm your host, Kevin, along with my wartime companion, Chad Lab.
What up?
Welcome to the show, folks. This week, we're talking about the 20-whatever classic World War I film, 1917, by Sam Mendes, starring two relatively unknown actors in the main roles and some very well-known actors in some sort of cursory parts, and we'll get into all of that stuff later. Let's jump in with some high level, bro.
High level, dude. This is it's not a World War Twofer. It is the World War, Twofer.
Totally.
So as is tradition, whenever Benny is unavailable, we'll talk about war movies because it seems to be our fucking wheelhouse. And
we save the war movies for when Ben can't make it.
That's it.
Right?
This one got on my radar back when it came out, you know, not really in the theater. I didn't see it in the theater, but it was on my radar. Didn't know that it was simulating a single cut, like that it was meant to not have any edits, quote unquote.
2019.
And so like I caught it, you know, because I'm into this kind of stuff and was really like, I don't know what the word is. It's like I was enraptured by it. Like I was just like, it's very compelling. The no cuts thing is very compelling.
Yeah.
And
good word choices there. Yep.
I remember seeing it and being like, yo, Kev, you need to see this. And then I don't know if this was the first viewing for you, because I know you hadn't seen it. Was this your first or second viewing?
Yeah. It was. It sat in my...
just sat forever.
My thing for a while, yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah, forever, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I'm super curious to hear about the first go. But like, it's a super compelling film. I think it, on the multiple watches, the shine changes. It's still solid as fuck, but like it's not as compelling. And it kind of like not holes, but like just, you know, it's like, you know, when you have like a super buffed up shine, like the shine wears off, and like that's fine.
Absolutely.
But it's really great and a really compelling flick, and you know, not knowing much, you know, about Sam Mendes' wheelhouse, and then seeing his pedigree and be like, oh, of course, like he's done some amazing stuff. And then like, you know, Roger Deakins is a cinematographer, and he's a goddamn legend. And
total legend.
My God, is the camera work and lighting and whatnot in this movie just beautiful. So it's just a really enjoyable. It's a really enjoyable flick. Even if you're not a war buff, I think it's enjoyable just because of how compelling the simulated one take thing is. So I think that's probably a reasonable place to leave it.
Yeah, that's good. I don't know. You kind of said a lot of what I would say. It was my first watch. When you mentioned the one take thing, I remember that you saying when you loaded that up, and I was very intrigued by that. And I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting and cool. And it just stuck in my head, right? But watching it actually happen was very, very cool. And I'm excited to talk about it. You kind of said everything else, so I'll just leave it at that and we can dive right in.
Yeah.
Mendes. This guy has done Road to Perdition, Skyfall, Revolutionary Road, blah, 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 blah. He's done a lot of movies, man.
American Beauty back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. High profile stuff, dude. Like good stuff, too. American Beauty won a bunch of Oscars, as I recall.
I mean, that one blew my top off when I was, you know, a young C-Lab. It's a very
young lab.
Yeah, it's I don't know, like it feels like an indie movie of the era, like that, you know, they don't make them like they used to, like it's just like that was the era when they would make really fucking weird movies, and
and that was a weird one, that's for sure.
It's a weird one, but it's really, I don't know, it's really interesting. You know, I had not encountered movies that were about like how fucked up life is in that particular kind of way, like It's a really interesting
segment of society as well. Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
it's a really interesting piece, and so like it's drastically different from this. It's drastically different from a Skyfall, for example. Like I'm not a fan of the post Quantum of Solace Craig Bond stuff very much, but like I appreciate the craft of it, even if I wasn't a huge fan of the flick. Sure. I think we talked about that in the Bond movie that we twofered.
There's things I like and there's things I don't like.
But he can put a good movie together.
No doubt, dude. He also did Jarhead, which is a really good movie.
Yeah, that's
too,
a good
man.
one. Yeah.
Gyllenhaal.
With old Drooly Gyllenhaal.
Drooly. You know what? this too. I'm excited to talk. I mean, we love World War II movies. We're already for the folks that Chad and I kind of secretly have like a whole cadre of World War II stuff loaded up that we can do. If Benny happens to be away for a week or whatever. And I was excited because this is a World War I movie.
Yeah.
And we don't see a lot of movies about that. We get a little snippet in Legends of the Fall, but not really a whole lot.
Yeah, which is a great flick.
It's a really good flick. I watched this actually 2 days ago and then again today, and I also watched Fatherland, that Rutger Hauer movie that I
I haven't seen that one, man. I want to check that one out.
It's on YouTube for free, and the quality is excellent. I watched the whole thing the other day, and it holds up beautifully. It's a great story in the same vein of Man in the High Castle, just a little bit more.
Yeah, cool.
Not quite as action oriented. So. Really was excited that this was the subject matter was World War I as opposed to World War II, and just seeing some of that landscape as well. Yeah,
no doubt. And like, I'm not sure if you caught the Peter Jackson "They Shall Not Grow Old" series like documentary, I guess. Do you remember that one? No. So it's worth checking out. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I'm just gonna like recall poorly all the details. But essentially, like, he had Weta Workshop and other people build a technology to restore original World War I film, and so like he restores all of this actual footage and makes it fucking incredible, and it's all like legit footage. It's really cool.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, it's really worth checking out. So like that was a thing for a bit, and then very recently, like Umba turned me onto it, but the remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, which I think is on Netflix, which is also heavy duty.
That is on Netflix.
Super worth checking out in this vein too, because like you were saying before, like I've always been obsessed with World War II. Like my grandfather was in Italy in World War II, so like even as a kid, you have some awareness of kind of the generation that you can, go and, give them a hug when you go and visit them for fucking Easter or whatever. Like they were there. And then you've got all the like kids books that are like, here's all the tanks. And you're like, fucking, yeah, like looking at all these, you know what I mean? Like shit that kids do. So like that was my jam, fucking G.I. Joe style obsession, Punisher War Journal style obsession with World War II, tanks and
Little
guns.
Green Army man, baby. Yeah.
What was it?
No.
The Cranberries said it right, man, with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. Like it's super fucking into it. And their guns. It's cool.
The thing too, it is cool, and I just pulled that up, that they shall not grow old.
It's worth checking out. It's worth checking out.
Yeah, I'm definitely
going to watch it again. It's been like
both of those
6 or 7 years, but I would. It's worth checking out just because it's the actual footage,
Well,
cool.
Totally, man. But even stuff that's like recreated fiction like this, or the All Quiet on the Western Front, like that stuff interests me too, man. Just because I'm interested in the period and what happened. That was a very different conflict than the World War II conflict.
And it's major meat grinder. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, big meat grinder. And the other thing too is the difference between those two world wars is that like when we were getting into World War II, we had gotten in, like, film had been established, and so that was a thing, and things were being filmed, and TV was a thing, and
the propaganda. There was plenty of Allied and Nazi propaganda of that era.
Well, we don't need to get into all that.
Well, just in the sense that they were using film, like it's an interesting. It was being used as a weapon and a tool.
100%. So like, but we didn't have that with World War One. Because like cinema was in its infancy, film was in its infancy still. You know what I mean? So it wasn't you know, you'd even have like a random guy doing some filming out in the battlefield, you know, or filming soldiers or interviewing soldiers or anything like that. So that footage just it doesn't exist, man. You know what I mean? Like that's the sort of interesting and cool thing there, you know, differentiator too between those two conflicts.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And just to your point earlier, like just never really paid a whole lot of attention to the World War I stuff. Probably because of the juvenile obsession with, you know, tanks and planes and stuff. Because like in World War I, they start on horses and they end on tanks. Like it was a transition of technology too. You know what I mean?
100%, man. Biplanes, bro. Biplanes.
Yeah.
You know.
I think this one of the kind of higher level thoughts that I had on this viewing is it's like a really clever setup for a sprawling journey. You know, like it's.
Yeah.
You know, like All Quiet on the Western Front is in the trenches with a couple of people going through the meat grinder. Whereas this is like, it's almost like a tour of a variety of elements of the war. Like the story, the story is structured in a clever way that you end up in a lot of different places instead of 2.5 hours in a trench where the guy fucking dies at the end. You know, like that's what you would expect from a World War I trench movie.
Sure.
And like it's just clever. You know, like it's the fact that it's his brother. You know, it's the Saving Private Ryan thing where it's like, why are we fucking going to save this guy? And then this dude's like, it's my brother. I'm fucking going, dude. You know, another guy's like, hey, wait, let's think about this. He's like, fuck you, dude. It's my brother. You know, so it's totally plausible. You know, it's super plausible.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
And you see a bunch of shit, like, you know,
dude.
There's a variety of settings. Some of them are a little cheese dicky at times, but like there's a variety of settings.
No, that's good. I didn't really find anything cheese dicky at all. I found this movie, just commenting on it as like a war movie in general, to be very. It really did a good job of showing how awful it was. Like,
sure.
I feel like the first movie that really did that was Saving Private Ryan. Right,
Mm-hmm.
and there have
what's that
been
movie?
other films.
You mean Shaving?
Shaving Ryan's Privates.
Yeah. Oh, that one. Yeah, I know that
one. But they, you know, in subsequent films, we've seen, you know, movies that really, really do a good job, you know, with the horrors of war. Actually, I think probably Platoon was the first that really did a good job with it.
Stuff,
you know, yeah, but then
Apocalypse
Private Ryan
maybe
was
a little bit, but it's
II.
more psychedelic.
Definitely more psychedelic. And then this one really did a good job of showing how just fucked up it was, man. You know, and you get that is as soon as they climb out of the trench and into the no man's land, dude, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like how aptly named was this area, dude, because it is bleak, dude. And the music was perfect to accentuate that bleakness, man. And the overcast sky and, you know, all of that, and just like how utterly decimated the area was, man, with just the water and the mud and like the shit. And like he cuts his hand and then he puts it inside the cavity of the dead soldier, man, where 2 rats had just run out of like a few moments earlier, man.
So
it was like
crazy.
Wow, dude. Yeah, exactly, man. You know, so this movie did a really good job of that. And, you know, like, I mean, these 2 guys, dude, they get beat the hell up, man. You know, one of them dies. The guy with the brother dies, for Christ's sake. Like,
which
in
is
the
also
beginning.
super clever. You know, like it's not like he reunites with his brother cheese bullshit. You know, like it has.
No,
that.
I didn't see. Yeah, and I didn't see that coming at all. I was like, oh shit, wait,
and it's
what?
halfway.
No,
it's halfway too. You know, like he doesn't even get to like the last hill and like dies reaching for his brother. You know, like he's like halfway through. He's fucking gone, dude. You know,
I think it's earlier than halfway through, even.
Or whatever.
And I like that
it's early enough where
chose
it's like,
to
oh
do
shit.
that. Yeah, so we didn't have like some stupid slow-mo shot later of him like, you know, diving for his brother and then he dies in bed. Like none of that. Like, and I'm so sick of that.
Tell
you know,
Mom I love her. It's like, I will.
Yeah. Totally. So it's great to not have that and to see, you know, something more akin to a real story. And, you know, of course, when you watch the movie the whole way through, you find out at the end that this is a real story. And this was told to presumably Sam Mendes by his grandfather or his great-grandfather or something like that, man, which is just mind-blowing, dude. You know?
I guess it's not.
Is it?
It's pastiche. It's a pastiche of stories. And so, like, I suppose, like, if you'll allow me to interrupt, like you were saying before, you didn't feel it cheese dicky. I think cheese dicky was the wrong phrase. I think it's like some of the things that happen here are super plausible, like him motivated to go because it's his brother, and then the other bits are implausible, which is like, you know, the milk from the farm feeding the baby later. You're just like, oh, come on. But it turns out that is a true anecdote of someone in the war, and like, the idea of a runner having to provide orders is a true anecdote of things that happen constantly in the war. And so I guess Mendez's, or is it Mendez or Menendez? Whatever. Mendez's, it's the Menendez brothers. They made this. They killed their parents and then they made this movie. There you go. Mendez's grandfather was a runner.
Grandfather. Yeah.
So he was a runner, and I don't think that I don't think he knew much, or he certainly didn't share much publicly about like what his grandfather did. But I think he took the inspiration of his grandfather as a runner, and then took some of the anecdotes, like the baby and the milk, and wove them all together to tell a story. So like, it's based on true anecdotes, but it wasn't like an overall true story, if that makes sense. But it's like true enough to be like it's like 10 different stories turned into one story through writing, you know, which is like perfectly fine.
Well, all those moments are true, so that's true enough for
true enough for it to have the gravity. Yeah.
And the thing, like the milk thing, that didn't bother me at all. Like I didn't see that coming. You know, I was like, oh,
it doesn't bother you,
like,
but you're just kind of like, oh, fucking, this baby needs this one thing that nobody has. He's like, well, I've got some. You know, it's like, okay, you know, like the power of that scene is the babe in arms, and you know, him connecting with the child and helping. Like, it's the helping that's the important piece of that moment. It's not the milk, but I find it interesting
it's not the milk.
It's Got Milk. Yeah, it's like a great Got Milk commercial. But like, I remember not on my first viewing because I'm so engrossed, but on a subsequent viewing, like on second or third viewing, I was like, this it's kind of weird, you know, that he saves the day with the fucking milk, but like, it's about the connection, you know. Like, I think for me, it's like the woman and the baby. Like, all you ever see is the fucking soldier running through the trench shooting shit up. You never see these fucking people that spend 3 years hiding in a fucking basement. Like, how the fuck do you survive that as a normal person? Like, it's bananas,
you know that there were
dude.
Germans. Yeah, you knew there were Germans in that village, dude.
And there'd be lots of, you know, obviously like rape stuff and like beatings and like, it's just like, dude, that shit is fucking crazy. And that's not
crazy.
Really, you know, touched upon it, even just for a moment here, to be like, to have that realization. You're just like, fuck, man, how do they survive? Like, it's pretty nuts.
I don't.
And so that makes it like where I don't give a shit about the milk, because there's some other interesting shit going on, you know. So I was just like, I don't care. But it is a little bit of a like stretch, and then to find it's true, you're like, oh, okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, I did not have as much of a problem with the milk.
I really kind of went deep on the milk scene.
You did go deep on the milk. That's okay. I because the way, you know, like the way it all unfolded for me was like I was still just so utterly blown away by the farm and the main guy dying, right? And I was like,
yeah, sure.
You know, and then I was like, and they kept saying, especially Schofield, God, I'm so hungry, man. I'm so hungry. Like, do you have any food? He finds the milk. I was like, oh, dude, the milk. Yes. That will fill you up, bro. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I was thinking, man. And then I just completely forgot about the milk. And then when he gets to the part with the girl, you know, and he's like, oh, I got all this food, and she's like, baby can't eat that. Baby can't eat that shit, motherfucker. Exactly, right?
Iced tea and he's like, protecting
I've got
the baby.
The milk. Yeah. So I was just like, yes, dude, the milk. Of course. I forgot about the milk.
And her face, she's just like, you have fucking milk? Like, holy shit. I love that, yeah.
I know. Why would you have milk?
No, okay,
because, turns out, me and my buddy were running up here.
Let me tell you a story.
Such place. And these people had just milked their cow, and then they died.
Turns
and then,
out,
you know,
yeah.
we showed up, and hey, the milk was still
Yeah.
fresh.
And the Red
What are
Baron
you gonna
crashed his
do?
fucking plane into my friend.
The Red Baron, totally, man. That bit was crazy, man. When like
It was.
I never
Even that was also a
ever
little bit of a
thought-
stretch. Like it's just like, oh, there's a dogfight. Oh, the plane. Oh, jump out of the way of the plane, and then you know, like they pull the guy out, save his life. It was really fucked up when they pull the guy out, and then the guy's like, you know, please helping me. You know, my leggings are on fire. You know? And then he's like, I'm going to stab you. It's like, all right, dude. Like, fuck you, motherfucker. You know, that's my best German, by the way.
Excellent. It's an Oscar-winning performance.
I've been
dude,
practicing.
especially after Inglourious Basterds, dude. Very nice.
Yeah, exactly. Arrivederci.
I don't know. I didn't really care about it. If I'm watching stuff like that, and I'm watching a quality piece of cinema, dude, like no stuff like that doesn't bother me.
Yeah,
Like,
it's fine.
I was like, okay, yeah, I can see that this plane is probably going to land pretty close, but like they pulled the guy out to save him, and I was like, oh, I was like, what's going to happen here? Is they going to take him along with them as a prisoner?
Yeah.
Is he going to help them? Like you don't know.
Steamboat
And the
Willie.
la-
Toot toot.
And the last thing that I thought he was going to do was pull out a knife and try to stab
Right.
the guy that just
Off
saved him,
camera
man.
too,
So, like,
which I liked. I
right,
liked that it
right,
was, yeah,
which I
yeah.
loved. Yeah,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
got Schofield over here. He's like, you know, whatever, fixing up his gear, doing whatever, getting
Well,
water
he's
out
getting
of
the water.
well,
He's
right?
like, no, no, no. You hear the other guy being like, no, no, no. You know, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was very unexpected, man. That whole scene situation, because it starts off very like serene, like
Well,
a
the cherry
comfort
trees,
food
man.
thing. Like
They're like, oh,
exactly.
you know,
They come over the rise, and they're like, oh man, there's a fun. I wonder if it's abandoned. And then he starts talking about the trees, and they're just kind of like, okay, let's
Yeah.
take a half a breath here. Oh, I found some milk, you know, whatever. So you think that like they're getting this respite, and it's actually quite the polar opposite, man.
Yeah.
Except when Mark Strong shows up with his band of
Buddy.
you know, Hellraisers and says, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, we're going down there. We'll give you a ride. I was like, dude, a ride? Sweet.
That's it, man. The bleed out scene was well handled. You see, you know, obviously it's like, it's not a trope because it's real, but like
No.
the
Yeah.
someone dying in someone else's arms thing is a very common thing in war movies for the obvious reason of lots of people died in lots of people's arms. But
Sure.
I don't know. There's just something. I think it was the one cut here where I don't know if you watched those videos I linked up, but there was one that was
I
talking
did
about how
watch
like
them. And some more. Yeah, they were excellent.
the editing happens in the camera, and like
hmm
you would have a close up of the guy dying, and then it would cut to the face of the guy comforting, and then it would cut to the picture, and it would cut to this and cut to that, and the fact that none of that happened, you feel like you're there. You're like there. Basically watching, you know, you are like the other dude. Like there's three people that are on this journey, and you're one of them as the viewer. You know, a lot of the time,
Yeah.
not
Which I
literally because of the crane shots and like the dolly shot, and like, but you feel like it a lot of the time. You know, like you're an observer as opposed to it being like entertainment, I suppose. And the death scene was super powerful because of that. Maybe
It was. I think it was a combination of that and just no. I think that's it. That is
And the
exactly
acting,
it. It's the
you know,
way
and the obvious
I was
thing
going to
of
say
that,
the
they
way.
acted it
Well,
well.
yeah, but you know, these are good actors, dude. It's like I'm not really worried about that, but you know, the I think what you said is right. It's the way they filmed it, you know, and chose to structure the film too. But that really is about the way they filmed it. So I mean, kind of segueing into like the big thing about this movie is that, you know, it's the idea is that it's supposed to be one long contiguous shot, and you know they almost really do nail that. You know what I mean? And it's like you said, you're on the journey with the man. You know what I mean? So what was cool in those two documentary videos that we had, and we'll have to link those up for the folks at home.
yeah.
Was that, you know, they were saying how they had to, you know, plan everything out like logistically, like how the action was going to play out first before they could figure out, you know, the technical parts with the cameras and stuff. And it seemed like even more of an intimate relationship, where all of the pieces in the filmmaking process kind of really blend together in a super cool and different way this time to get that kind of one shot take. And I think, it's totally unique, and it does allow you to go on the journey with the two soldiers, and then obviously the one soldier to the end of the film, man. And it's a strength of the film on top of already having a great story and great actors and a great script and all of that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it like the editing and the camera stuff is interesting technically.
Yes.
And the sets needing to be the right length. So like every scene has to be the exact same length as the trench that they built. So the trench needs to be this long because that's how long we talk about the thing. Like that's technically like incredible, the amount of detail and attention to detail. But aside from the technical achievement and the fact that you like feel engrossed, it also is like there's so much momentum that's carried because you're watching the movie in quote unquote real time. Like there's so much kind of, I don't know, like energy as a result of it's like, hey, we need to go here by daybreak or 1,600 people die. And then it's just like, there's none of Benny's favorite, 2 hours later, 6 days later. It's just like fucking balls to the wall from get-go. Like,
yeah. And it's happening.
And the music helps, like you said. The music is great for the tension, and this changing of the scenery is great for the tension and not getting bored of the same shit. But like, fuck me, does the one-take thing really push the film really hard,
I agree. And you're right. I think it gives it a different energy and momentum, man. Like the camera, in the most literal sense, is moving forward from point A at that base to point B at that other base, right? The front line. So there's the momentum in that. And, with a few notable exceptions, the camera really does not stop moving the entire time, man. Like even like when they go into rooms, they talk about this in one of those little videos, is that their use of, doing 360s so that they could just keep it going, right? Like just you're turning, you're looping, and it's like now you're onto the other character. Like it's also exactly how it would be if you were a person in that situation with those two people. Turning your head and looking and turning your body and looking. It's like it is exactly how it would be. So it's even more immersive from that perspective, man. So I think that comment is bang on, man. That camera it doesn't stop. And they were so clever about where they did the very few cuts that they did do, that it makes it, virtually seamless, man.
Yeah. And like the camera doesn't stop, but it's also not fucking Transformers 6 Rive of fucking Megatron where like they do some going around in a circle stuff, or kind of coming around 180 degrees, but they also block it, where like they'll come up to a corner in the trench and then the guy walks past and all of a sudden you're behind the guys and then a minute later you're in front of the guys. And it's like, because if it was just constant 360 stuff, you get, not literally, but kind of literally, you just get dizzy or like, just be like, why the fuck are we spinning around all the goddamn time? So they were like super clever about how they did it too, which is even more, kudos to the artistic choices and stuff.
Well, I agree. And I think that they had to be that way to come up with a way to combat what you just said, which is, some kind of, fatigue where you can't just be turning or going and panning in one direction and then panning back and then panning back. Like, that's what it would be like if it was a POV perspective for sure. But, that could have been jarring for the viewer. As it turned out, the whole experience is so utterly smooth, man. It's like, you just don't see anything like that. Like I can't think of another movie that's like this, man. So
no,
the experience is so smooth and so unique. It's just,
and handled poorly, it would turn into a video game. Handled poorly, it would be over the shoulder GTA, or like, obviously it's not first person, like a first person shooter, but like it would feel on rails like a Disney ride or something. But it's handled so deftly that I don't know. I mean, we're film nerds, so like, and especially, you having actual, a ton of theater and acting and stuff, like you'll see, you and I would imagine, and probably Benny too, like would see some of the stuff, like, oh yeah, that's an interesting shot, as opposed to like being fully engrossed. But like, I'm okay about staying fully engrossed in a movie, and like the way that this is put together is fully engrossing. You're not like, oh, this is gimmicky, or like it's the 10-minute scene in Dune with Doom with Carl Urban where it's first person. I would love Carl Urban to be in Dune. He'd be a good Duncan Idaho. Fuck, let's have a whole conversation about that. I love Momoa and all,
I think he would be a better Duncan Idaho, and I would love to see a first-person section of the movie Dune as well.
Just riding sandworms. That's all. That's all it is.
All right, totally.
But I don't know, man. Like, it's like Deakins, man. I was familiar with him generally, but like when I watched this, I didn't even know if we would ever do a show on it. But I did a little bit of the deep dive and looked at those kind of behind the scenes things, I don't know, a couple years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And just like back in the day, I was like into film photography when that was still a thing, like just as the digital kind of shift was happening, and read a bunch of like Ansel Adams's like technical books to learn about film stuff. Mm-hmm. And so like was super impressed with like Ansel Adams as a photographer. And
yeah,
like nowadays you can just fucking Photoshop the shit. Back in the day, it was like you couldn't do that. Like it was like it was kind of like Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, where like half of the wonder for me is that they did a lot of the stuff in camera. You know, like the opening scene with the city and the flames and kind of the cyberpunky city. A lot of that was in camera. Like it's not special effects. It's not matted in. Like just the way that these creators were able to do the shit in camera was so fucking impressive that it like it just made it so much cooler and better. I
agree, man.
You know, Ansel Adams shooting these giant ass things and having to like dodge and burn by hand out of a dark room. And I feel like Deakins is kind of that. Like so much of the shit is naturally lit, and like it's going from a bright outside to an inside lit by oil lamps, and the fucking light doesn't go to hell. And like just it's fucking magic what this dude can do with lenses and light. It's fucking incredible. And so, like, I
agree with you, dude.
It was that for me was like a huge thing here of how it managed to be such a great flick, because it's just fucking beautiful.
It's a visual feast.
It is
totally to use a hackneyed expression, but like, I mean, when you look at this guy's body of work, thinking about what you're saying, because I looked him up whilst I was listening to you, you know, and you're talking about Fargo and Jarhead and Oh Brother.
Yeah. Dude, like all the Coen Brothers stuff.
Dude, Lady Killers, The Village, No Country for Old Men.
Like No Country is so visually distinct and like
good, dude.
And Oh Brother is so visually distinct. Blade Runner 2049, obviously. Like, I mean, the dude.
2049. He did Sicario. He did Skyfall, Prisoners. Like,
and it seems like his big break back in the day was the original John Hurt 1984. You know, like so, just like he's got a pedigree like no other. You know, like
wait, what? The John Hurt 1984? What?
He did 1984 with John Hurt, like the film version of 1984.
No, I got you. Sorry,
but just tons and tons of stuff.
Really impressive, man.
I just feel like he's like he maybe there's lots more, but like he is firmly in the old school, you know, artist space in cinematography. Like I wish Benny were here, because like, you know, one of my closest friends, Chad Strange, is a DJ, and back in the day he would spin records, like actually spin records. And nowadays people don't actually spin records anymore. They're these digitized versions of the music, and like cool. It's fun to go and dance to it. And like, it's similar experience for a person in the audience, but the craft is different. I would argue. I don't know. It just seems different. And like, I have so much respect for people that can fucking actually spin wax, like actually spin a record. Man. And I feel like it's similar here, where it's like, this dude is a fucking genius with light and lenses and the technical stuff. Whereas like you or I could go and get like a red camera and bullshit our way through a movie, you know, because the tech is so supporting of kind of quote unquote amateur or maybe not master level technical achievement. And this dude is clearly in the school of like master. And it's just super impressive, you know?
Yeah, he's honed his craft, man, for sure. I mean, he also did Benny's favorite movie of all time, Big Lebowski, dude.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
And Shawshank. So
yeah, you Shawshank, think about this, dude. Like that's iconic looking, you know.
Yeah, but like so is Sicario, so is Blade Runner. Like I just watched Sicario recently,
They
man.
all have
you know,
totally different feelings.
right, but that's the real magic there, dude.
That's
is
it.
He's matching the cinematography matches the story and what's
The
happening
piece.
there, dude.
Yeah.
And he's morphing with it. You know what I mean? That's where you get that real genius coming in there. So yeah, I agree with you 100%, man. It's impressive.
There's probably no shortage of people that make a bunch of good movies that have the same look and feel because that's their thing. Wes Anderson maybe would be a good example where like maybe the cinematographer doesn't have much choice because of how, cartoonish Wes Anderson's precision is, but like
Sure.
the fact that what you just said about like Deakins having like 10 movies with 10 drastically different looks and feels, like that's impressive as fuck.
Yeah, and different stories too. You're talking sci-fi to drama to
Sure.
period
Yeah,
pieces,
yeah.
like it's very, very cool. Very, very cool. Legendary stuff. He's really great.
Be a good transition to like this is Bitsy and Bobsy, but
It's all
the flare lit nighttime city is
Oh
one
my
of
God.
the best scenes I've ever seen in a movie ever.
Wow.
Like it's
Why?
mind blowing how good that scene
Because
is.
of the
because of the
why?
light,
Because of the lighting?
because of the lighting and the lenses and the fact that they like have those flares in camera going over this set, and it makes that like the most surreal and yet real city, a post-apocalyptic kind of city I've ever seen. Like it's fucking unbelievable. Because like just before that scene, the dude gets popped in the helmet and knocked out. So it's the first real obvious cut where time is lost for the main actor. And then he wakes up and like it goes like the camera flies through the front window and you're in this like city that doesn't even have any fucking buildings anymore because it's bombed out, and these lights are just flying over in these arcs and the shadows are just flying around, and it's just unfucking believable. Like it's beautiful and terrifying and all of the things. Like I don't know, for me it's like one of the best scenes I've ever seen in any movie. Like it's absolutely stunning.
It was really. I'm not taking away. I agree. It's definitely great. I just was curious as to why you thought that. I feel like they did something similar with flares like that in Apocalypse Now, but I could be completely misremembering.
Yeah, they did.
But
they did for sure.
The way that this was done was definitely interesting and different. And when you watch, when I watched the longer of those two videos you sent, that 17-minute video. They talked a lot about the lighting rigs and all of the stuff they used to achieve those effects, which was really, really interesting and cool, especially since, you can see as the camera pans out the window and he's kind of getting his first glimpse of that locale, at night, obviously, with these flares, you can see the actual flare in the reflection in the puddle on the ground. I was like, wow, dude, that is...
Yeah.
So
and then you
cool,
can't
man.
do that digitally. Like that's Deakins and his team making those models and like having those, like you can see the footage of the wire arc with the like LED light on the model showing you where the shadows are going to be. Like that level of planning is the only way to do it. And
that part was crazy.
Some asshole would do that scene digitally and it probably would have been like, oh, that's a weird digi scene, whatever. But the fact that it's all on camera, dude, is just, it's art,
Well, yeah, without getting into like a broader thing, you keep bringing up this like analog, aspect of filmmaking, like Deakins honing his craft and like these guys, taking the time to do what they did with this scene and the lighting. And there's something about films shot in analog that just there's a different feel there. There's a different clock working there behind the scenes and a different engine. And I think that those movies are better, man. And I'm glad to see, and we've commented on this briefly in the past. It's great to see newer directors or directors that are not necessarily new, just like going and stepping away from the digital stuff and like, let's get into some practical effects because a lot of times it just looks better, it works better, it's better with the actors, like all of that stuff, and I think that that's a thing. And
definitely.
I think it shows in this film and certainly in this scene, like it was really, really cool how they had that model to, figure out the path of the light, man. And just wild. That's just really, really, really
It's craftsmanship.
a level of, really level of commitment and detail for sure. It's cool.
Yeah, what you said actually reminds me of interview. I was watching something with Villeneuve about Dune 2 and potentially the DP there too, because I watched a variety of interviews with both of them. But you mentioned like, and it like, just to be super clear, like, we're not being snobby about like shoot it on film digi sucks, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming. And what you said about like doing the effects practically is definitely a thing. Like I definitely prefer either a practical effect or a blend of practical with a little bit of digital touch up to make it, whatever, which there is here. For example, some of the crane transitions, there's a crane in the background that gets painted out, so like that's like, I don't give a shit. Like that's not Captain America fucking doing like a goddamn Tony Hawk 720 to fucking punch an alien in the face, like it's not that.
Go ahead, I'm with you.
But the I saw this interesting interview with let's just say it's Villeneuve, where he said like, I watched it a couple days ago. He and Spielberg are on stage, and Spielberg is interviewing Villeneuve, and they were talking about the lighting because one of the key inspirations for Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 is Lawrence of Arabia, and Lawrence of Arabia is a legendary shoot. I actually haven't never seen that movie. I need to see that movie, but Lawrence of Arabia is a legendary movie in the sense that it was all in camera. Like there were thousands of extras, and there was out in the desert, and the light was real, and all that kind of stuff. And so all of the Dune Part 2 stuff, the lighting was out in the desert and real because of how magic Lawrence of Arabia was for Villeneuve. And so Spielberg was talking to him about the setups, and he was like, how did you do the setups? Like you'd have to fucking like do all these things at the sunrise every day. Like how did you do it? And he was saying that, they did a lot of planning. Like they had an Unreal Engine kind of like point model scan of a place, and they would put lighting in it to determine you need to be there at 4:27 p.m. on the 7th of April to get that shot the way that it is. So it's very similar in a digital sense to the physical model here with Deakins and the lights. And then it turns out that they chose to shoot Dune 2 digitally because the ISO was such that you could get ultra low light shots that were literally impossible on film. So they shot the film digitally, and then they projected the digital movie onto 70 mil film. So then they get the benefit of the analog grain in the film, and then they took that, and that's how they kind of blended the digital with the analog. And so I feel like that's really interesting because you can, out in the field, you can shoot the thing that's impossible on film without artificial lighting, and then you bring it into and transfer it to film, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. And so it's interesting. It was a really interesting that I had never considered before. And I feel like that blending is where it's at, and the blending of like mostly practical effects with a little bit of digital cleanup, as opposed to the full 360 Transformers fuckery that like is so boring now.
Yes, wow,
it's like
well
super
said,
long-winded,
dude.
but like I feel like that's
No.
kind of where I really appreciate the craft. Is like it's okay to do some digital shit, and it's okay to paint out a fucking crane, but like the fact that these guys are so grounded in having it seem plausible or practical is what's really attractive.
Well, I that, but also that in this example that you're using with Villeneuve, he's utilizing all of the tools.
Yeah.
Right. And the goal is still film, you know what I mean? But it's like film has its limitations. So it's like to do something like that is very cool, right? Because you're kind of like almost going in reverse, right? Because anytime something new comes along, it's like, we go way too far to the right and then way too far to the left to find the center. And it was the same thing with the CGI. Like we first saw it in like Tron and Willow, and then, all of a sudden it was just like everywhere, and there's all these digital this and digital that and blah 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 blah, and it's like, all right, we've been through that.
It's boring
period,
now.
Infancy phase. Yeah, it's boring, right? So we don't care about that anymore. We want to see real films and good filmmaking, and like that's what we're seeing now is those directors that I was mentioning before saying, hey, you know what, film is better, analog is better. I want to use practical effects here. It looks better on film. people that are insistent on using film, like Tarantino, for instance, is a big one, you know. And then like this example that you use, Villeneuve, you know, saying, well, you know what, we can get a better effect of this element right here using digital, and then to turn around and like print it out on film. It's genius. It's great. I love that, man. You know, it's because now like we've gone through the infancy, and now we're actually utilizing the format.
Yeah.
In a way that's
as a tool, not the tool. It's a tool.
Thank you. Yeah. As a not as an end piece, you know, but as a tool, exactly. To get
when everything's when all you have
better.
is a hammer kind of thing. It's like we had when all you have is CGI hammers. Everything looks like a nail. Like it was just constant fucking CGI, dude. Yeah, and like I will say one thing for MCU. Like I appreciate that they like, as a forcing function, did so much CGI over their 55 movies that like they got it all out of our system. Like they can fuck right off now, you know. Well, and that would have taken a decade otherwise, you know.
Sure, but another compliment to them is that they were able to tell. Certainly, just talking about when I talk about the MCU, as we discussed, it's just the first one to Endgame. Like
it stops at Endgame.
There's nothing. There's nothing beyond that, right? So they were able to utilize that digital technology to tell compelling stories, and bring to life comic books that, you know, people have been reading for years. So I think that was a very cool thing, and they did it to great effect. Without making it. It never felt like embellishy. You know, it never felt like, oh wow, look at this.
Or it was comic booky in the right way. Yeah.
Well, or the fact, you know, it wasn't like they were making some big eye candy scene because they could and because it was digital. They were doing it to move the story along. That's how I typically felt with the MCU movies. You know what I mean? So, you know, good on them for that.
Well, and based on, you know, this conversation, I feel like it solidifies my opinion that Endgame is essentially peak CGI. Like it was like it was the peak of the overuse of green screen environments. You've got like all of the superheroes standing in a giant ass digital line with Cap catching the hammer, you know, like that's about as green screen as you can get, and it worked to great effect. Yeah. And then after that, it's like the post Endgame stuff where it's like more of the same, and you're like, okay, like this is all right, it's fine. But like Endgame is like a home run of that like CGI over the topness, you know.
Well, you know, and just to kind of like take this in the other direction for a quick second, and then we can move back into 1917 or whatever. I was rewatching Kung Fury the other day, and
the WWI
Kung Fury
fighting one.
Wait, what?
The guy with the tongue that talks and shit. Oh, that's Kung Pao.
No, that's Kung Pao, dude. Kung Fury is the thing that's set in the 80s with the cop.
Oh, yeah, totally, dude.
Time,
yeah, that's
you know?
the short film with Hitler at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 45 minutes long, 35, 45 minutes long. It's brilliant, dude. It's like one of the best things. It's literally one of the best things that's come out in the last 10 years. And it's so good.
Easy.
And like, it's so good, man. And the only way David Sandberg was able to do that movie was through green screen. You know what I mean?
Super digit out, yeah.
This is like the opposite situation where you've got a guy that has zero money, zero studio, zero budget, and like the only way he's able to bring his vision to reality is by using digital filmmaking and digital effects, and he does it to great effect. And again, yes, the entire movie is totally digital and it's totally CGI, but it's like there was no other way for him to tell the story.
Yeah,
and
it's like perfection.
And he uses it just to tell the story. It's gorgeous, dude, and it's hysterical and it's awesome and it's kick ass and it's all that stuff. So interesting.
No, that's true. We could go down a major fucking rabbit hole with the CG stuff, and we have many a time. So that's probably a good place to leave that. But I just think like the village scene and the amount of in-camera stuff here for me is like maybe what I'm saying is like the artistry of the technical filmmaking in this movie is a huge rewatchability factor. Like the movie's enjoyable first run. It's magic on the first run. It's the Sixth Sense where like the twist is like, oh shit. Yeah. Like the one shotness of this is the gimmick. It's the thing, but it's done well.
Yeah.
And it wears off after you watch it a couple times, the gimmickiness, even though it still catches you from time to time, and for me at least, it becomes about the technical stuff, and like the just the technical shit here is just so rewatchable. Like it's just the way they do all the blocking and fucking all that stuff is just so in camera shit is so amazing. So.
And while I agree with you that the magic of the first viewing is never, obviously you lose that after the first viewing, but like the smooth nature and that POV feeling, like that will never go away when you watch this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just the high shine that knocks off, but it still has a shine.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. But I think, it's interesting too to me that now at this point in my life, how I will watch a movie because of what you just said. Like, oh, this looks really great here. This is really well shot. The photography was incredible. The cinematography was incredible. Like whatever it is, so that will get me back to watching something.
Sure.
Whereas it never would have 15, 20 years ago. So,
and sometimes sometimes it's the acting. Like it's the scene. There's a scene that's just so killer in terms of actors or dialogue. That it's worth rewatching. Like, there'll be like chunks of a Pulp Fiction that I just, would watch on its own. You know what I mean? Like, the scene with like Lance and Travolta, there's so many like, you don't need to watch the whole movie to just go back to a thing, but you tend to watch the whole movie to see the thing, and I feel like the technical piece here is like that.
I agree. Look, Mickey Rourke doing Marv in Sin City is so good. Like, that's great. I'll just watch that section, which is A Dame to Kill For. Like, I'll fire that movie up and just fast forward it to the beginning of that, watch that, and then shut it off because it's so good. Because his performance is so excellent, man. And again, the visuals and the way they did that movie. But at any rate, all right. So what else about this movie? Since we're bitsing and bobsing towards the end here.
Yeah, I think bitsing, like I ended up writing down the chunks where I was like, it's an interesting structure.
Yeah, I did too.
And so just to rattle them off real quick, you got the intro and the British lines, then you've got over the top No Man's Land, then the German lines, the cave bunker. So touching on that, like cave bunker and the rat and the tripwire, that'd be cool. The farmhouse scene we've covered, Handsome Dan in the truck. So like your buddy Mark Strong or whatever, like
Strong. Yep.
That was cool. Nights in the city, the baby, the forest, meeting the second, and then the brother at the end. So like I think like the cave bunker German line stuff was really interesting. And then maybe
that was the
a little
only
bit
other
of
thing I wanted to touch on. Yeah,
and then maybe a little bit of Blake. The dynamics between Schofield and Blake were interesting. Like so maybe the first leads into the second, where like Blake is very boyish. Shout out to him, by the way, King Tommen from Game of Thrones, as the kid that dies. He's very boyish, which is, for lack of a better word, tropey to World War I, just because of how young many of the soldiers were, and like him choosing not to kill the rat and having that hesitation to kill something. Kind of signals a hesitation to kill and an inclination to help with the pilot, and that's to his detriment later, So that's kind of an interesting piece.
Yes.
And then the whole, like, they're terrified they're going over into no man's. Like, everyone's like, you guys are out of your fucking minds going there. And they get over, and there are no Germans, and they get in there, and they see the big bunker, and they're like, this is crazy. It's just a really interesting kind of, like, it's kind of like a through the looking glass moment, where like Alice in Wonderland, she goes into the house and eats the mushroom. Like they go into this cave and have the tripwire moment, and it's just like a really interesting transition and interesting interaction between the two characters and how the babyface kid saves the other guy's life, kind of stuff. And it's just there's a lot in that sequence. So when you wrote down the notes for that sequence, like what are you thinking? Like what brings that to the fore for you?
I just kind of bookmarked these items as, things to talk about. I had Bomb in the Bunker, the plane crash, Mark Strong, blah, 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 blah. It was nothing.
Cool.
I didn't have like extensive detailed notes about it. I really liked the scene. It was just, it was good. There was a lot of tension going in there, and you were feeling that on the way in. Obviously the tripwire and the bomb in a confined space, like very scary, dude.
And the rat being the jarring one that triggers it is interesting. They're like, no.
Yes. Yeah,
rats.
and you know, in one of those videos I was watching, they were talking about how they use the rat to take you
Yeah.
around the room so you can see the vastness of the space, you know, and then the actors even commenting on it, characters rather commenting on how big that space is. It was just a great scene, you know, and it was just, you know, when you're kind of creeping through the detritus of places that people have inhabited, man, especially in that kind of setting, you know, it's very, very
Totally.
eerie and so forth. So, yeah.
And it's a very good example of the show don't tell. You know, you can
I mean, less
imagine
is more.
a hack writer and a hack film being like, Schofield's like, you know, Blake, these bunkers are bigger because the Germans, you know, it's just like, doesn't do anything like that. Like they're so comfortable in this space and like, oh, look at this. These guys had this fucking holy shit. Let's eat some food. Oh yeah. You want to eat some dog meat?
Or
you know, like
just,
it's so in the
just
moment.
comments. Yeah, he just comments on how large the space is. He's like, wow, this is huge.
Yeah.
You know,
and then it tells you to look at it. And then the way, like you said, the rat walking around and the camera following it shows it to you. It's a lot of show don't tell, which is just, yeah, pretty cool.
But not in that way that you're talking about. That's kind of irritating. It's a very it had a very
it's a good
organic
example
feel to it that was good.
as opposed to
no.
exposition bad example. Yeah.
100%. What else? That's all I have for that section.
I mean the actual explosion and Schofield being blinded and having to jump over the mine shaft, like Schofield. It's very Indiana Jonesy, but like it's not a bad thing. Like it's an interesting. It's an interesting scene. You know, they get out.
They both take place in the same time period. So
like you bastards, and he's pouring fucking water all over his face. You know.
Yeah.
And then they even handle that well too, where like they come out the backside of the cave and they're in the artillery area, and Schofield's just like washing fucking boulders out of his eyes, and the other guy's like, "Let me tell you a story about the guy," and he's like, "I don't want to hear your fucking story, man." And then and then they end up giggling. Then they end up giggling about it. You know, like it's like a great tension breaker in a way. You know,
right? Yeah,
some interesting stuff there. Like, it's a shame that Blake dies, but up until he dies, their dynamic is interesting. You know, Blake seems like the kid who hasn't seen the shit. Schofield seems like he has seen some shit. And, you know, Blake, like the obsession with the ribbon, you know, Blake being like, you know, you get the ribbon and it's all, you know, get the medal. And Schofield's like, I traded mine for some fucking wine, dude. Like, fuck it.
Right.
I don't want your fucking ribbon. But meanwhile, Blake saves Schofield's life and he's like, you'll get the ribbon now, you know, or the medal or whatever. So it's I don't know. It's subtle, but there's some interesting stuff in there.
And I'm glad you brought up that dynamic because it's important to talk about that, you know, because they do. You know, it's basically just the two of them from the tree, which is where we start, up until
the farmhouse. Yeah.
What's his name? Walsh. What? The kid that dies. What's his name again?
Blake.
So until he passes away, it is just the two of them, man. So we get a lot of that dynamic of them, you know, jawing back and forth and, you know, having to work together to move it forward. So it's. It is a good dynamic, and it you know, and because of that, that's why you're sad when, you know, Blake bites it when he gets stabbed by the German. You know, you're just like, wait, no.
And it's, you know, a good example of like a boy dying in a field. You know, like he's a man. Like I don't mean to be like disparaging, but like
no.
The kids are fucking dying. You know, like it's crazy.
They're kids too,
and it's handled well.
Especially then, you know.
Yeah,
you had dudes that were 16 lying about their age to get, you know, to go to war. Like, it's freaking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
What else?
I mean, play by play that goes straight into Mark Strong, who I absolutely love. Like, I guess maybe like a little cast nerdery, dude. Like, there's a lot of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy cast people in this movie. Like, that is a fucking great movie.
Oh my god.
And it's like half the cast is here, man. And it's just like, I'm so pumped about it. I'm like, I'm going to go watch Tinker Tailor again. I watched it like 2 months ago. I'm going to watch it again.
I've made 6 attempts to get through that movie, and I've never made it once.
All the way
I gotta
through,
sit
dude.
down and watch that.
It's such a
No.
hardcore espionage flick, and it's
I
hardcore
don't
to
think-
the point where it's like dry as fuck, and that's potentially why you weren't able to get through it.
No,
It's
I haven't
so
even gotten
dry.
a third into it because it's not because of that. Mostly because I fell asleep attempting to watch it when I went to bed.
Which I think is because of that. Like you're just like, parenting and working and lifing, and then you're just like, this is good, but I'm just gonna close my eyes for a second. I love Gary Oldman, but
okay, all right, I get that. Yeah, I get that.
it totally like it's nothing wrong with it. Like it's just life. Life is lifing, dude. It's dry to the point where you fall asleep. Like I love Formula One racing, and sometimes it's like so comforting that you just like fall asleep while they're doing their thing halfway through the fucking 2-hour race.
Fair enough.
But man, it's a great flick, and there's Colin Firth and Strong, and there's like everybody. Fucking the whole thing except for Gary Oldman is basically in this flick.
Yeah, I think the guy, one of the either sergeants or lieutenants in the beginning was the chap that played Moriarty in the
Nice use of
Cumberbatch. Thank you, Cumberbatch Freeman Sherlock run.
Oh yeah,
That's
I
an
need to
excellent
revisit
show.
those.
And
Cumberbatch
yeah,
was
that
in
guy
Tinker
is
Tailor
like-
as well.
well, he was in this as well. Also,
Yeah.
So yeah, him and Cumberbatch and I don't know. Mark Strong is just. I've always been a fan of his. He just sort of
I love
seemed
him,
to,
dude. He's
to me
so
anyway,
good.
to kind of just. He just came out of kind of nowhere, man, and he was just there, and he's like, just man, he brings the thunder every single
really
time,
does.
and he had a really short part in this too, man. It was not a long part at all, and but very memorable as
Very
usual for
memorable.
Mark Strong.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think
all
we
I got.
talked about this briefly when we did him in Sunshine, Pinbacker.
yes,
That was a funny one.
with that weird Freddy Krueger thing going on. Yeah, totally.
Also a short role in that one too, man. And like, I don't know, like he just is.
yeah.
He's my Bruce Greenwood, dude. Like, I love the guy. He's so charismatic.
He's your Bruce
and
Greenwood, bro.
He's my Brucey Greenwood. He's just like, I don't know what it is about him. I just love the guy. He's great, dude. He's like such a fucking badass. Like I don't know. He brings the
He
fucking
is.
thunder.
Every time, man. Every
I don't
time.
need to see him topless, but he's my Bruce Greenwood.
But you've got. I know, you've
but
got
I
a
do.
shirtless
You-
poster
I'll-
of him. I don't see it
I
on the wall
wish-
behind
I
you, but I know
wish.
it's on the opposite wall.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
right.
say I wish I had a bit where I could just like turn this thing and it would be a poster of him because it would have been fucking. You would have died if I could do that.
You know I would.
But he's
man.
so good, dude. I love
know
him.
I
He's so
would.
great. And he's not really. I mean, he's got a pedigree. He's been in a bunch of shit, but I don't know. Nothing that's like earth
Strong?
shattering. Well, just like nothing that's
You're
like
talking about.
yeah, strong. Yeah, like he's been in a ton of stuff, and that's cool. But like, it's like, you know what I mean when I say this. He doesn't have an list of movies. But he's an
Yes,
A-lister
yes.
for me. You know what I
Yes,
mean? Like he just hasn't had the
100%.
opportunity maybe to be.
No. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
I don't know.
Now that you
'Cause
put it
he's
like
just-
that, I know what you're
He's
talking
got
about.
so much chops. Or like Colin Firth, for example. Like he's got an list of movies, and like he's very
Totally.
like in the in that kind of British Ponzi douchey, sexiest fucking snaggletooth alive British guy bullshit. But like, like I love him. I love Colin Firth, dude.
I do
But,
too, man. But he definitely does it. But you're right. And I think he- he's like your I lost it. It'll come back to me. Go ahead. Keep going.
That's it. Like I just love. What is it? Is it Colin Firth in Love Actually, where he's the douchebag writer who falls in love with the Spanish maid or the Spanish cleaner? Like he's such a
believe so.
fucking schmuck, and I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah, he's great.
Everyone's
He's
been forced to
excellent,
watch
man.
that movie every Christmas with one of their girlfriends, and like he's fucking hilarious. In that.
Yes. Okay, that guy that I was thinking of, Andrew Scott is his name. That was
Who's
in
Andrew
Sherlock
Scott?
with
Oh, okay.
Cumberbatch. He played the last officer that they met up with before they went over into No Man's Land.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
he's,
okay. He was good,
similar.
man.
He
The guy
kinda-
that gave him the flare
He's
gun.
great. Yes, pops
Yeah,
up
dude.
everywhere.
He had
He's,
some charisma. And with this holy unction, you guys are fucked.
Oh, that was great, dude. The holy
That was
unction with the
great,
booze, you mean?
Yeah.
That was great.
It was great.
Right?
I
Yeah,
just
good
love.
touch.
I don't know. Like it's the little moments of writing where they're like, your orders are to what? Like, okay, man. Like you go over here and yeah, fucking good luck to you, dude. Throw the flare gun over your shoulder when you get shot in the face, you dumb fuck. Bye.
Yeah, I was like, wow, okay.
This is so
Yeah,
hardcore.
it was.
But
Yeah, it was.
when
It was
you're,
good.
when you're in that grinder, I guess, like you're just like, okay, dude, like, those are your orders. Sucks to be you. Peace out.
Yeah.
It's just funny.
All right, what else you got, dude?
And maybe another little moment, like to close out on Mark Strong when they get to the city. And he's like, make sure you have witnesses. I like that. Like the officer being like, dude, be careful. Like that was cool.
Watch your back. Yeah, I thought that was cool too.
And then just before that, pushing the stuck truck and, Schofield trying to push it. And everyone's like, what are you doing, man? Like, don't be in a rush. And then, like the gravity of like, there's like a lot of little moments that even outside of the technical shit is really well put together.
Yeah, and there was an Indian or a Pakistani guy who was a soldier
dude,
there too, who it was very memorable, and he was like kind of, he was watching him act like that, and he was like, he seemed very intrigued by that.
Yeah, he's like, what's the story here, man?
Backing him up a little bit. Yeah,
he teased
exactly.
it out.
That was cool.
Yeah,
I like that. That was a good.
I guess like
it's
it's kind of a attention to detail nugget, but like I guess like the wood on the stock of the Indian man's Enfield rifle was a darker wood because the Indians were issued different versions of that rifle. So like the level of detail, it's just like, damn, dude. Like I just love it when people have the attention to detail. Like it's kind of a stupid nugget, but like it's also kind of a cool nugget.
Why was it a different kind of wood?
Well, just like they were manufactured in India and the trees were fucking different. I don't know. Like the batch of weapons that were distributed in England were X, and the batch of weapons that were distributed in India because it was an English colony were Y, and he had the Y version of the weapon that had a different wood on the stock, and then, like that's in the flick, and they don't tell you about it. They're not like, hey, look at my weapon, it has this, like, they don't beat you over the head with it, And I just love that someone somewhere had that level of detail, and it's like fucking you want to high five that
like
prop
that.
person or whatever, because I love that kind of shit. That's the kind of shit that like an Adam Savage makes like a 15-minute video on, and I'll watch the shit out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. All right, okay, so wrapping up strong. What you wanted to talk about the forest? We already talked about the city.
Yeah, the forest. Like similarly, like when you said you'd watch a chunk of Sin City, when you'd watch A Dame to Kill, was it Dame to Kill For?
Yeah.
When you'd watch the Dame to Kill For scene, I would totally, and when I was thinking this yesterday, I would fast forward to the nighttime light sequence and just watch that. Like if it was like, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie and you don't give a fuck about World War I and you don't think you'll ever watch the movie, go to 1 hour 15 and watch that scene just because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think the forest is not that. The guy singing in the forest is not worthy of watching just the scene, but by being at the end of the journey, it's the most like ethereal. It turns the movie almost into like a myth, like a Iliad Odyssey kind of mythical quality. Like the dude just singing that song is like, I don't know. There's just something about it that's like super touching and like surreal and like bizarre and just stunning. In the forest there. I don't know. It's a really powerful moment. And, Schofield is sitting there like exhausted, leaning against the tree at dawn, realizing that he's failed.
Wet, yep.
And he's like, I failed. I didn't get to the Devons. And then he's like, I need to find the Devons. And they're like, where are the Devons, mate? Like, it's just, I don't know. There's just something about that song that, it's like the reverse of the cave with the tripwire and the rat. Like that's like heavy handedly forcing you through this dark cave out into the artillery and the shit. And this is like taking you from the shit into like, the scene in Oh Brother where like there's the three women singing a song, washing their clothes, and the guys are like, this is amazing. And they get clocked on the head. Like it's just something ethereal about it. I don't know.
No, I agree. It's a really good scene. It's not like it doesn't have that visual splendor that the nighttime flare scene has in the city, but it's a really cool scene, and it's a great transition from the city into the end or the final stretch. You know what I mean?
And the river, which is kind of fucked up. Like there's some interesting, crazy, like floating bodies.
Well,
stuff.
yeah, that was the last thing that I had was just that one. There is the smallest moment in the river when he you think he's going to smash up against the rocks, and I'm like, oh my God, no. And then, finally he finds the log, right? And he's
yeah.
Oh, I can take a half a breath. And then there's petals of the cherry blossoms all around him on the water, man. And he just takes this second to notice them, man. And it's just it's a great moment. It's like, oh my God, I can, it's a respite from what's going on around him, even for the briefest of second. And I loved the inclusion of that, right? And then clambering over all of those bodies that are dammed up against that tree, just disgusting. But then we're into the forest.
Then into
so
the surreal
the
stuff.
way that the way that it's set up, it's like he's he takes a second to crouch down and cry, and then he press forward, and he's going, and you hear it from so far away, dude. That's what's so cool. And because we have that that POV thing going on that we get as the viewer, we're experiencing it just like he is, so we hear it from far off, and then we walk with him into the scene and get to hear it at full throttle. And we have the same confusion that he has. We're just you're walking in the middle of the forest, this massive group of people, and this guy is singing. I was like, what in the fuck is this, man?
Yeah.
So I loved the execution of that. Yes, it was very, very cool. And then the wrap up on that of him and everybody walking out of the forest, then all of a sudden it's like, bam, you're in the trench. And it's like, dude, you are here. This is it.
And before we get to that final running thing, I think one piece is you get up to the guy singing, and then Schofield sits down, and the camera leaves him and goes around, and you end up looking at all these people observing, and all these boys watching this guy sing.
Yep.
And so you get that moment of it's just a bunch of kids. And then what you were saying before in the river, what I thought you were going to say was I'm with you 100% on him and the pedals, but I thought you were going to say with him grabbing the log, and then he kind of falls asleep, and his face dips under, and he's drowning, and he comes back up, and then he falls asleep again, and he's there's that bit too, these little moments.
Yeah, that was a great bit too.
But it goes from run through the town, jump off the bridge into the river, through the river stuff, and it goes from crazy to quiet to exhausted to the song, and it's a long release of a lot of the movie's tension, and then you go straight into that trench and that final push. So it's a really interesting break in the tension that then you get ramped back up again, and you're running on the ridge, which is a pretty crazy fucking scene. So
it is a crazy scene, and we can talk about that. Let's talk about that for a second.
And that's not even the end too, which I don't know. There's just so many things, so many pieces. So finding the second and running the ridge is holy shit. And then it's the Cumberbatch in the bunker convincing him thing. So it's kind of two things, but yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy, how that wave was going off. He's like, well, the quickest way there is to run down the battlefield. That was scary, dude. There was so many bombs, pieces of artillery that came so close to hitting him, dude. I was like, oh my God, man. And then to get the other thing too, right? And there's other stories like this out there, but to get to the end and to find Cumberbatch and be like, I've got this note from my mom.
And the guy's like, you're too late. Fuck off.
He's like, it's too late.
And he's like, nah, man. Nah.
Right.
Okay, read
and
it.
then he kind of focused, right? And then he kind of focuses on Blake, which I thought was cool. It's all right, redirect, and the major guy that was underneath Colonel Cumberbatch was...
yeah, good work, son. It's just, there's so much.
Yeah, exactly. He was good. And he helped him out, was like, hey, go check the casualty station. Yeah.
And then Cumberbatch is like, this is why we do what we do, a bit of exposition there. And then he's like, now fuck off. I love when Cumberbatch is like, now fuck off. It's like, fair enough, dude. We're going to get sent out next week. He's good at it too, man. Now fuck off.
Yeah. And he's really good at it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And, full circle, you get to the brother, and Rob Stark, the King of the North. It was interesting that he was cast there, and that scene is just so well handled, you know, like, oh, my brother's in the 8th. And then the silence says everything that needs to be said. And,
Yes.
you know, he gets handed the rings. So, like, in a moment, it's like, this is the last of my brother. There's nothing left but this handful of useless fucking metal. And his hand stays there. It doesn't move as Schofield walks away. And then Schofield turns around and says, like, you know, like, he was funny. He would tell funny stories, and he saved my life. And like hearing that, and him being like, "I'm glad you were there." Like, there's so much going on in that scene, man.
It's a lot,
and
it is a lot.
It's so realistic. Like,
yes, and a great use of negative space. You know, like you said, the silence tells everything. You know, so
definitely
that's a great level of acting skill there. I love to see that sort of thing. You know,
and it ends at the tree. You know, like it opens at the tree and it ends at the tree. There's just there's a lot there.
Also very cool. Yeah, it is.
It's just it's
good.
I don't know. It's a journey of a film. It is very you know, it is an odyssey. It kind of fits with, you know, the old odyssey like structures.
Sure.
But it's
a
also
journey
simple,
in the most
in a way. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it is, but it's in the most literal sense. It's a journey, and more than so many other films, you get to take that journey with the with the cast as well. I mean, you are right there with the main characters, and that's
it's kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
It's kind of like the opening D-Day Normandy shaving Ryan's private scene for the whole thing, like. One of the biggest attractions of Ryan's Privates was that was on purpose. Was the D-Day stuff?
Just keep going. We gotta finish this.
But I remember when it came out when Ryan's Privates came out.
We're gonna ruin this great discussion.
I'm gonna drive this thing into the ground. When it came out, everyone was saying how realistic the D-Day sequence was. And the D-Day sequence,
I remember that too,
because it was immersive, and maybe because it was it probably wasn't the first version of immersive cinema, but like it was a moment in cinema where you were immersed in something like that, and everyone was like, "Holy shit!" And like it was handheld a lot, you know. There was a lot of handheld, shaky cam, and a lot of accuracy to the way that they did it. And this movie is not handheld shaky cam. It's steady cam the whole way. It's steady cam rigs, steady cam cables, steady cam cranes. So it's different, but it's similarly immersive. And so like to what you said, like you're on the journey the whole time with these guys. And in Shaving Ryan's Privates, you're on the journey with them to storm the beaches, but then it steps away into a normal movie. Do you know what I mean? And like it's interesting. And I love how one stupid juvenile thing just like makes it so much better.
Yeah, well, yours are special because they seem to proliferate, dude. Because they
they do.
Laugh.
Yeah, I'm a fucking man show, whatever.
So I think, that's an interesting take. I would say, you know, that the whole shaky cam thing, you know, and people are just like, it's like you're in the action. It's like, am I really in the action, or am I just having a harder time watching the movie, dude? You know what I mean?
But you got to admit that in the D-Day scene, it works. Maybe not in any other scene in any other movie, but in that fucking scene, it works.
No, it works. What I'm saying is that I think that now with Sam Mendes making this movie, right, and having, you know, this war movie that's like, it's not all action like Private Ryan's but you know, there is a good bit of it, and I think the Steadicam almost lends more to it, or he proves that you can do a Steadicam in these types of POV situations, and it's as good, if not better, because we get to see so much, and you're not. Your brain is not working overtime to correct for the shakiness, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Oh, it's like I'm in a war. It's like, yeah, that's all well and good. And like, yeah, it worked great in the D-Day scene, and it's worked great in many other scenes and many other movies, dude. But I think that this proves that you can do it with a Steadicam, and it may be a better way to do it. You know what I mean? Because you're not fatiguing the viewer as much. You know what I mean? You're allowing them to take in more information without getting exhausted in the process of doing it. So
Sure.
I don't know. I'm
And
just throwing it.
if
I'm
you're
just throwing it out
nervous,
there.
if you're nervous about shaky cam not being as immersive, this is a film that proves that wrong. Like you are just as immersed in this as you are in the D-Day scene in Ryan's Privates. Like
100%.
it's
And we've talked
it's
about
just as immersive.
Agreed. And we've talked about films where you're too deep in, you're too far in. You know,
the Transformers thing.
The fight scenes in Batman Begins and Dark Knight. You know, are two ones that always jump out for me. You know, but so at any rate,
well, a lot of it's
that's an
coming off of the
interesting,
Bourne Identity stuff we talked about. Yeah, for sure. Like it was like a flavor of the month style of action.
It just happened to last 2 decades. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The whole fucking time.
Okay.
Yeah, no doubt.
Are we good here? Are we?
Yeah. Any other bits or bobs or anything that comes to mind? I think
No.
we covered it pretty solidly. Though actually, there is one thing that I think you'll connect with here, where
What's up?
there was a moment where George McKay, who plays Schofield, is being interviewed as part of one of those YouTube docs that we watched about the cinematography and the blocking.
Okay.
So I think one of the ones was Thomas Flight, who's a great YouTube channel. He was the one on editing and camera. You just watch all of his fucking videos. They're so good.
Nice.
But George McKay said it was like a piece of theater. So he was talking about the long takes forcing it to be blocked in a way like it was theater. Like if something goes wrong, you have to stay in the moment. And I thought that also really hammers this movie home, where Dean Charles Chapman, the kid who played Blake, said like I'd be in the end of a 6-minute take and I'd forget who I was,
Right.
because like you're so engrossed in it as an actor,
Yeah, I like that.
that you become part of the film. And I feel like that was some secret sauce too. Like it was a theatrical movie about World War I, which is kind of incredible, you know.
Yeah, very cool, dude. I like that. I very much like
It's
that.
kind of interesting little piece.
Indeed. Nuggets.
Yeah, there were a couple.
This whole episode was a nugget. Go. What do you got?
One was funny where it kind of ruins the movie, but there was an extra in the movie that said that they couldn't help but laugh at the final shot with Schofield under the tree, because hundreds of soldier extras pissed on that tree all day long, and they didn't realize that the actor was going to sit at the bottom of it at the end, which I thought was hilarious. So the dude's just like sitting there and piss. It was pretty funny.
Wow, that's funny.
And the other one was that the milk is true. And then there was this isn't a nugget, but it was really interesting, and it has nothing to do with this movie, but everything to do with soldiering, where there was an episode of The Daily, the New York Times podcast, a couple weeks ago on March 13th. It's called The Alarming Findings Inside a Mass Shooter's Brain. And so this dude was a soldier who never saw combat. He was never deployed. He, did supplies or something. And he was a mass shooter. And they took his brain to the place where they did the CTE stuff for the football players to see if he had the encephalitis or whatever it is that can cause serious aggression as a result of head trauma. And he didn't have any of that. But what they found is that he was a guy that trained people on a grenade range. And they have found, science has found very recently that explosions are causing personality changes in soldiers to the point where they get aggressive. And it seems like a lot of the PTSD and fucked up stuff that goes on with soldiers may not be because of the trauma of the death and the killing, but maybe because of the trauma to the brain of the grenade and explosions. It was just really interesting. And whether it's true or not, it's
very interesting.
I don't know the science behind it. I don't know if the science will go there or not, but it was a really interesting episode. And I was reminded of it at the end when Schofield's running through the trench and he comes across the captain who's crying and who clearly has what they were calling shell shock in the day, which now more modern times have called PTSD. And so this guy being a mass shooter and having them trying to say oh, it's because of the trauma of being a soldier. He was never deployed. And so it's like a control. He was a person who has never actually seen the stuff that we normally blame the horrible behavior on, seeing and killing people would obviously be traumatic. And they are thinking that it's more to do with the explosion. So it's just really interesting. So it's not really a nugget related to this, but it kind of ties in a weird way.
amazing
worth
that it's
listening to.
taken this long for them to figure, to start thinking about why that might be and how to take care of these people better, which is a super sore spot with me. So
no doubt. I mean, no doubt. We could
on.
go down that rabbit hole, but my uncle was victim to the Agent Orange stuff. So like we've never really taken care of people, but it was, it's worth a listen if you're interested in that kind of space. Just like it's a random, interesting kind of anecdote nugget.
All right, Anik Nugget over. We have no deaths this week, so
no.
And don't even try to give me one of your like, oh well, I might have had a.
I said delightful a few times. You just didn't hear me.
No, you did not. Yeah, you didn't hear me. You were in the bathroom or whatever.
You were on Instagram, not listening to me in a twofer.
Exactly, dude. That's when the magic really happens. So, all right, no deaths. Do you want to bother rating this movie, or should we just move on?
I think if you are a fan of cinema and you're not into war movies, it's worth checking out. If you're into war movies, it's definitely worth checking out.
100%.
It's a really interesting, great example of movies. Like, I watched All Quiet on the Western Front. It's worth checking out if you're a war buff or a buff of the book, whatever. Sure. But if you're not a war buff, it won't be your thing. This, I think, has so much going with it. Even though it's gimmicky with the single shot, it's worth checking out. It's really interesting.
I don't think I wouldn't exactly label that gimmicky. I think it makes it a very unique film. So it's worth checking out, I think, just for that. If you're not interested in the source and in the material, you know what I mean? So, I would say I would definitely watch this movie, especially if you're into World War movies.
I mean, if you're into war movies, this is right up your alley. It's like it's kind of quiet like a Dunkirk, or there's less dialogue. Like a lot of people are like, Dunkirk sucks, no one talks. It's like, well, okay, man, but go watch an action movie if you want fucking explosions. Exactly.
That's what Fatherland is like. It's not an action movie, dude. It's great though. It's a great sort of espionage-y kind of whatever.
Sure.
So yeah, what do we talk about what we're gonna do next week?
I would imagine that we're we should take a moment. We should take a moment and say that we weren't gonna do this movie. We were gonna do Battlefield Earth.
We should.
we need to take a moment to talk about Battlefield Earth. I don't know if you watched more than 5 minutes. I don't know if you watched more than 5 minutes of it.
I watched 30 minutes of it.
Did you?
I was ready. Yeah, I did.
I was like, dude, we got to skewer this movie and
Well, set it up for everybody at home. Hold on, set it up for everybody at home. So this movie, we've batted this movie around a couple of times.
Battlefield Earth,
about a month ago, first and foremost, I think Chad jumped. We got to the part of the show where we say, what we're going to do next week, and Chad threw Battlefield Earth up. Ben flat out refused to watch the movie. He said,
do it.
I will never. But
it wasn't.
Ever,
I refused to
ever.
watch the movie. It's like I don't even, not in my fucking house. It's like we will never talk about this movie. It's like okay.
Right, exactly. So that means the movie gets relegated certain topics to
straight to twofers.
Straight to twofers, and I was bullish on it. And as we did our usual back and forth this past week, I said, "Dude, Battlefield Earth,"
and I was like, "Yeah, fuck it, let's do it." Forrest Whitaker's Tour de Force,
and then now you can go.
And then
go ahead and say.
So I turned it on. The thing about that movie, right? I'm a sci-fi head. I didn't know it was a Scientology movie until significantly later. I remember seeing it on HBO or some shit, and I honestly remember being like, "Oh, it wasn't so bad."
Yeah,
and
me too.
How fucking wrong was I? It is widely considered to be the worst movie ever made in the history of movies, and I think I agree. It was fucking terrible, dude. And
how many?
Benny is listening for the show notes right now, and he's laughing at how fucking stupid we are, as usual, because we're stupid. But dude, that was a turd of a movie. I cannot express how fucking bad that movie is. It's so bad that I don't even think you should watch it. But holy shit, Like, it was so
This is
bad
a
that
gift.
I watched it. I was like, we can't do this. We have to do something else, dude.
This just makes me want to do it even more on the show. And I watched probably 30 minutes of it, because I was like, because Chad got back to me immediately via WhatsApp.
While you were sleeping, I watched it. So I was like, dude, no.
He was like, this is so terrible. We can't do this. And I was like, oh, come on. Because him and I are always the ones that are like, let's lean into it. It'll be fun. We'll have fun with it. And so I got 30 minutes into it, and I was like, dude, let's do this. I still want to do it. It is terrible. Man. It's much worse than I remember. You're right.
It's 4,000 times worse than I remember.
Yeah, by an order of magnitude, exactly. And I still want to do it because it's just so terrible, dude. And just so rife with dogma, which, I mean, whatever. That's whatever. There's religious dogma in other movies, man. But yeah, wow. It's bad.
So that was the thing.
So
that's
terrible.
not what we're doing next week, but that happened. And it was funny. And I'm on Benny's motorcycle, dude. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do this. You should do a one-for. You should do a monologue.
Right? I'll do a one-for show about it. Hi, everybody.
I love this movie. It's so bad.
I'm Mulvey. Yeah, right?
So yeah, just shout out to that fucking turd of a movie that has the sniper from Shaving Ryan's Privates as the lead fucking human.
Right?
With the braids.
And oh my God. Barry Pepper, dude. And I want to see on Instagram, I want to see all of you people out there with the proverbial metaphorical pitchforks and torches saying do the movie, do the movie, do the movie. Dude, yes, that's what I want to see. Anyway,
well, that's not what we're doing next week. I think why don't we do what we had planned on before Benny wasn't able to join us and do Army of Darkness.
Oh, there you go. Army of Darkness. Okay, awesome. Yeah, sounds good. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks for joining us for 1917, an excellent film. Go out and see it. And we'll see you next time for Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, Army of Darkness. Goodbye.
So, yeah.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode, folks. If you'd like to check out the show notes for this week's episode, you can do so in your podcast app of choice or at our website, ebd.fm/episodes/249. Wow, we're one away from 250. Is Army of Darkness going to be 250, bro?
That fits.
Right?
That works.
Folks, we really appreciate all of the support that you guys give us via Patreon and all of these various other things. And what those things are, for people that are wondering how you can support the show, you can directly help us on Patreon. You can rate us and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also tell people to check out the show. It's very powerful. Word of mouth is very powerful. So please do so if you're inclined to do so. As always, join us on social media if it tickles your fancy, especially if you want to see Battlefield Earth become a show. And we use the handle at EBD Podcast. And that's it. Thanks for joining us for 1917. We'll see you next week for Army of Darkness. So long for now, folks.
Beady. Stop it, do it.